Hey, this is pretty funny. Not only does British Prime Minister Boris Johnson look like Donald Trump, he's also triggered just as easily by people who disagree with him. We're very quickly learning. We've been covering the atrocious idea that is Brexit since the vote back in June 23rd of 2016, I believe it was. And whether Brexit will or won't ultimately happen, we still don't know, although it's not looking particularly good. But in any case, one of the most recent sort of milestones or events in the Brexit saga was the abandonment of the prime ministership by Theresa May and her replacement by the pro-Brexit conservative Boris Johnson, who looks a lot like Trump and we're learning is Trumpian in some other ways. And things have not been going particularly well for Boris Johnson. Between abandonment of the Tory party by one MP, combined with a number of others just not agreeing with Boris Johnson's path forward on Brexit, he is managing a Brexit that is once again very much imperiled and increasingly unpopular. Yesterday, Boris Johnson was in Luxembourg, and he was scheduled to do a press conference with the Prime Minister of Luxembourg. And this is amazing. They come out of this meeting, and there are two lecterns and two microphones set up for them. And there's a lot of protesters that have gathered in Luxembourg. And the Prime Minister of Luxembourg ends up just walking Boris Johnson straight out. Boris Johnson just completely bails on this press conference they had scheduled. And then around comes the Luxembourg Prime Minister and actually does a little bit of a press conference by himself. Check this out. We're going to have video here of Johnson walking out with the Luxembourg Prime Minister and just walking right on by the lectern and straight out as a result of the protesters. And then the Prime Minister of Luxembourg comes back around and actually talks to the press.
Show you, this is live pictures as Boris Johnson leaves the Luxembourg Prime Minister's residence. Let's just listen in. Well, you can hear the noise that awaited his departure, and that has led to the cancellation of the news conference that was scheduled for 2:15 this afternoon. As the camera swings around, you'll see to the left there the podium where they two prime ministers would have held that news conference, but because of the noise and the booing and the use of a megaphone, chants from many British expats among them, we're told, with banners protesting Boris's Brexit vote. In fact, I think we may well hear from the Luxembourg Prime Minister right now, so let's just listen in. This is Xavier Bettel. Let's hear from him if we can.
Thank you very much for listening to me. I think demonstrating is a right in a democracy, and it is important also to be able to exchange and to listen to each other.
This is just amazing. First of all, how funny is it that Xavier Bettel, the Luxembourg Prime Minister, walks out with Boris Johnson? Like, clearly Boris Johnson is fine. They had their meeting. They walk right by where the press conference was supposed to be taking place, walks him right out, and then goes over to the lectern, and immediately people quiet right down, and he's able to talk with no problem whatsoever. And the hilarious explanation from Boris Johnson's team was that it was just too loud and rambunctious because of those protesters. Rambunctious being my word, not theirs, admittedly, and that it would just be really hard for anybody to hear him if he participated in this press conference. And yet, it seems like it was fine, and he would obviously have been given the opportunity to speak. What a brave guy, right? Trump wouldn't go to Britain unless Britain could guarantee that protests would be quashed and Trump wouldn't have to be driving around met by protesters. And then you've got Trumpian British Prime Minister Boris Johnson going to Luxembourg and just straight up walking away from the press conference without participating. And there's a very interesting parallel sort of developing between Trump and Johnson, other than, as I've said, they have a very similar look physically. They're both triggered by protesters very easily. They both are increasingly not respected by other world leaders. Almost every world leader other than, I guess, some of the authoritarian types, I guess, like Trump, or I don't know if respect Trump is the right word, but most world leaders don't respect the current president of the United States. Fellow European Union leaders increasingly don't respect Boris Johnson and his harebrained ideas. So what hopefully this represents, we may be starting to see the pendulum sort of swing back against the nationalist authoritarian ideas that have been sort of successfully masquerading as populism. Over the last 4 to 5 years, it's become trendy in some circles. Hopefully, we're starting to see the pendulum swing back the other way. One other similarity I'm seeing between Trump and Boris Johnson is that the United Kingdom is increasingly seen as a laughingstock internationally as a result of the endless Brexit fiasco, much like the United States under Donald Trump is also seen as a complete and total laughingstock. It's actually quite remarkable, the similarities that have developed between the United States and the UK over the last couple of years. We'll continue to follow Brexit. We'll continue to follow Boris Johnson and the ways in which he is increasingly similar to the President of the United States. Let me know what you think about him just bailing, walking right by the lectern, and going on out and back to Britain. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. And make sure that you are following me on Twitch at twitch.tv/David Pakman. If you have an Amazon Prime membership already, at no extra cost, you can subscribe to our Twitch channel with something called Twitch Prime. Amazon Prime confers 1 free Twitch Prime membership per month. Costs you nothing, but it counts as a paid membership for us. It's like free money that you can give us at twitch.tv/David Pakman. Today's program brought to you in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a great service that I use all the time. What they do is they take thousands of the most popular nonfiction books, including the newest bestsellers. They condense them into 15-minute audiobooks that you can listen to, and you still get the most crucial information and insights from each book. And I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. I recently checked out Soccernomics by Simon Cooper. We do have, after all, the World Cup going on recently. We also have been talking about BS Jobs, and there is a great new book, BS Jobs by David Graeber, which I listened to on Blinkist. They're constantly adding new books to the platform. You will never run out of fascinating and critically acclaimed books to enjoy. And our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting a link in the video description. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.